What's up, fight fans and YouTube family? And we're back at it with another edition of Round One Sports TV. Let's talk about it. They recently stripped the 147-pound undisputed champion of the world, Terence Bud Crawford, for his IBF 147-pound title. What does that mean? Why did they do it? All that and more. So join me as we have this breakdown. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Please give the video a thumbs up. And like always, let's get right into the video. Well, many people are coming out and making a lot of speculations of why they stripped Terence Crawford for this IBF title. But they're not saying the real reasons. And here on this channel, I'm going to give you the real reason of why they stripped him and why they've stripped some of the fighters in boxing. Okay. Recently, Terence Crawford won all 4 belts by defeating Errol Spence Jr. at 147 pounds to unify all 4 belts. And by doing so, he put himself in a rematch clause with Errol Spence Jr. The IBF saw that when Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford is going to shoot the rematch, then Terence Crawford is telling them that he's probably going to shoot the rematch back at 154. And if he does that, then none of those belts are getting paid because none of them are the champion at 154. It's no secret that Bud Crawford is not making the weight at 147, and he's not going to defend those titles. The IBF saw that they couldn't push his mandatory, which was Jaron Boots Ennis, because they were third in line. His obligations as followed. He owed a mandatory for the WBC first, the WBA, and then the IBF. The IBF then thought it over and saw an opportunity whereby stripping him and upgrading Jaron Boots Ennis to the now 147-pound IBF super champion. Jaron Boots Ennis is ready to go. He's ready. He already has a fight scheduled. That fight will be for a title defense, and the IBF stands to make money off of that. I need not to remind you that this is a business disguised as a sport. And this is what I'm trying to tell you, that it didn't make dollars and cents for Terence Bud Crawford to hold up those belts because they weren't going to get paid for the next few years. He's already making it not a secret that he wants to move up to 154 to challenge Jermell Charlo. So why hold up the division? So the IBF is already seeing that there's no future with Terence Crawford, so they're electing to strip him. That's a business move. Not a black and white move. They're going to want you to believe that they're stripping a lot of black American athletes, but none of them got stripped because of their skin color. They all got stripped because of business decisions. Case in point, Devin Haney. Devin Haney just recently got stripped for his WBC title. Why? Because he's going up to fight for the 140-pound WBC title. By stripping him of that title and putting it back in the 135 and giving it an opportunity to Shakur Stevenson and Edwin De Los Santos, the WBC gets paid for the 135 and for the 140. And if Darren Haney comes back down to the 135 and wants to get that title back, an even bigger storyline, they still get paid. That's a business decision. And if you're saying, then why don't they strip Canelo Alvarez, right? Who the hell is going to strip Canelo Alvarez? Okay? He's the biggest cash cow in all of boxing. His boxing matches start at $30 million. Okay? And then they're all accusing the WBC of why hasn't the WBC stripped them. But I've never heard anyone else say anything about the other major sanctioning bodies. Why hasn't the WBA stripped them? Why hasn't the IBF? Why hasn't the WBO? It seems like the WBC is getting all the slack. But none of the other sanctioning bodies are stripping him because he's the highest paid boxer. No one's going to strip him. And if you're thinking that it's a black and white thing or a skin color thing, then answer me this question. Why haven't they stripped Jermell Charlo? Jermell Charlo has not been active for over 2 years, and the WBC has not stripped him of his belt. You know why? Because there's nobody at the 160 pounds that got a bigger name than him. It's more profitable to let him keep his belt, right? They're allowing him to come back and fight at a catch weight, and they're still not stripping him. Because when he comes back to the 160, and if shall he be successful and he goes back to his old ways, they got another money big star right there. You see? So they're not stripping Jamal Charlo just like they're not stripping Canelo Alvarez because of money. They just stripped his the younger brother, Jamal Charlo, right? Jamel, right? And gave and upgraded Tim Tszyu as the champion. Tim Tszyu just had a fight coming up. Guess who just got paid? The WBO. Now, if he chooses to come back down and fight him, what do they got? A mega fight. And Tim Tszyu brings a belt to the table. More money, more money, more money. These are all business decisions. It has nothing to do with the fight. What the organizations are doing, they're looking, in advance. When there was a situation when there was a fighter claiming that he was injured, such as Jamal Charlo, in the case of Tim Tszyu, he had to provide x-rays of his hand. They deemed it a valid injury, and they gave him an extension. And with that extension, he chose to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez. Of course you're going to get stripped. He knew that going into that. And you better believe that the IBF has already had a meeting with Terence Bud Crawford. And Terence Bud Crawford shared his future plans with them, and they were not in it. They stripped him. That's a business move. It has nothing to do. All these guys that are being stripped or they're letting them hold their belts, it's for a reason. If they're not stripping you, it's because there's no one else to give the belt to that's going to bring in more money than that fighter. You see? And that's how sometimes this sport is. I need not to remind you all the time that boxing is a business disguised as a sport. You see? So when you're telling me, oh yeah, David Benavidez hasn't got a shot at the WBC championship, well then why doesn't David Benavidez go the IBF way, the WBA way? Because he's going to run into the same wall. He's just going to run into the same wall. If Canelo doesn't say yes, they're not stripping that man of none of those belts. But yet the only belt that's ever mentioned is the WBC. Look, I say it all the time. They had a future with Jaron Boots Ennis. By upgrading Jaron Boots Ennis to the 147-pound champion right now, he is scheduled to have a fight. That's money. And then Terence Bud Crawford is on his way out. Jaron Boots Ennis is your next shiny new thing. He's the next rising superstar. You better attach your belt to him first. If the other major sanctioning bodies are smart, they would strip him of all those belts if he decides to fight at 154 against Errol Spence Jr., since that fight will be for no belts. And since he's at 154, he probably is going to stay there. Just take all the belts. Strip him of all of them. He's blatantly telling you that he's tying up the belts. He's going to pick the fights he wants right now. He's at the tail end of his career, and he's only fighting fights that make money. And if that fight doesn't have to make money at 147, there is no money fight at 147 that makes dollars and cents right now, then that's not where he's fighting. And that's why they did that. That's why they did that to many other boxers. That's why they did it to Devin Haney. That's why they've done it, because most of these moves are chess strategic moves by the sanctioning bodies. They just don't strip you because you're a successful champion. Why would they take the belt away from the guy that's bringing them their money? They're not going to do that. You have to be doing something that doesn't profit them. That's the way they do it. They would strip you. And I was talking about this in my last video, how stuck up the IBF is. I mean, it is a good belt. It's a good organization because they do cater to all the fighters. But they're tough. They're tough. They're no bullshit organization. And if they don't see that they're profiting anything, they will strip you in a heartbeat. But if you defend their title well, they'll make you money. They will definitely make you money. So look, I just wanted to clear some things up because you were going to hear a lot of things and it'll probably turn you off and thinking that it was unfair or unjust of why they're stripping your champion and they're not taking the belts from other people. But when you look at it from the outside in and as a business standpoint, you'll see why they do this. And it makes dollars and cents. And that's why they keep fighters like Tank Davis, the interim champion, and announce them as champions. Because part of Tank Davis' success is that belt. He might go on and say that all belts don't matter and this and that. If it didn't matter, why don't you give that belt up? Because it does matter. It has an allure and appearance to it. And let's just keep it in mind that when you're representing these belts, you're at your job. These belts and organizations and sanctioning bodies give you the platform, their world title. Just because you win the world title doesn't make it yours. That's still their world title. And they need to make money. So that's how that goes. So I just hope that I cleared some things up, and before you hear some things and you start going along with the narrative that some of these YouTube channels are just pushing out hate. And they're seeing the angles of this and they're not really seeing the business sense of it, and I see the business sense of it all. They didn't do any harm to any of these guys, but they just didn't see any future with them anymore. And that was pretty much a no-brainer for me. Take the belt from Terence Crawford and give it to Jerome Bruce Ennis. Now, Jerome Bruce Ennis is going to get this belt, and he's going to get a lot of criticism. And right away, you're going to hear a lot of people call him the email champion, which all started it up from Devin Haney. Which, in fact, in reality, he wasn't the first person in the world to be notified by email that he was a champion. He was never the first person. Just Tank Davis came out and said he must have been the first person to ever been notified as the email champion. But in actuality, he wasn't. Okay, and he's not going to be the last. In this sport, belts and players in this sport change hand almost on a nightly basis. So look, Jerome Bruce Ennis is going to have to prove himself now as the champion, but now he is an official champion, and congratulations to Jerome Bruce Ennis. He was waiting in the wings for a very long time, and Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. did hold up the division for over 2 years. I just wish Jerome Bruce Ennis success. I hope that in his next fight he should be successful and get a good title defense and officially become champion, because once I know that it sucks getting it this way where you didn't win it in the ring, but he'll get his opportunity. I just don't think that it's going to be against Terence Crawford. Okay, for as much as people would love to see that fight, it's just too much of a risk at this stage in Terence Crawford's career. It's too much. That's you got to admit, Jerome Bruce Ennis is good. And he would lose so much in that fight. So I just wanted to touch up on that, and also touch up on the fact that the Japanese superstar Naoya Inoue and Tapales, they are fighting to unify all 4 belts right now. Tapales stands to unify all 4 belts at 122, and the Japanese superstar stands to unify all 4 belts, but also be the second man in boxing history to have successfully unified all 4 belts in 2 separate weight divisions. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because one of my subscribers in my comment section said, well, they just stripped Terence Crawford of his IBF title, so now he doesn't have all 4 belts. Well, he might not have all 4 belts, but he doesn't need none of the belts right now. The minute that he successfully completed that, you could strip him of all the belts. That doesn't take away his achievement. He's already done it. It didn't matter if he went out on the next very fight and got knocked out. It still doesn't take away the fact that he successfully unified all 4 belts in 2 separate weight divisions. That is a done deal. You see, so they can take that belt away from him. It doesn't matter. He still holds that title. So the Japanese superstar, he's going to be given the opportunity to do such a feat. And if he is successful, then that raises the bar again. Now it's whoever gets to the 3 division, all 4 belts. Can any man do that? And listen, honestly, I started thinking about this the other night, and when people were saying that the Japanese superstar was so small and so little, and they didn't know how far he can go. So what I had to do was, in comparison, his height at least, to some of the fighters that have tried it. And man, listen, right now, Tank Davis is 5'5". The Japanese superstar is 5'5". Okay, other men that were successful like that was another great fighter by the name of Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker. Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker would always put down that he was 5'5.5". He wasn't no 5'5.5", right? He was barely 5'5", right? But my point being, those men went all the way up to 140, 147 and beyond. You see, Tank Davis has already fought at 140. He's 5'5". The Japanese superstar is 5'5", meaning all he would have to do is put on weight and muscle mass throughout the years, right? He has a real interesting story, because if he actually pulls off 4 more weight divisions, what's standing in his way, right? Let's count the weight divisions, right? What's standing in his way is 126, 130, 135, 140. That's 4 more weight divisions right there. If he didn't make that jump and he didn't skip over 1 weight division, he would have 5 right now, but he doesn't. He only has 4, okay, where he has successfully gotten a belt in his division, in that division. He has to get a belt in that division. He can't just jump over and you count those 2, right? Okay. So right now, he has 4 weight divisions where he has successfully gotten a world title, right? So he would need 4 more, right? Well, he would need 6 to tie the record, right? And then beyond that, he would break the record, right? Which is foolishly held by Manny Pacquiao. And with all my respect to Manny Pacquiao in the world and everybody that thinks that I'm taking a shot at him, I'm not. I respect Manny Pacquiao in every way. I'm just honest in my reporting, and I have to tell the truth. I'm bound by the truth. Manny Pacquiao is being given credit for 8 divisions, but they are also counting a Ringside Magazine belt for him at 126. He has no other world title there. And in other cases, they're using some of his interim belts. He doesn't have successfully 8 real world titles in 8 divisions, so to speak. What he does have is 6 weight divisions, and he's probably the best in the world. Floyd Mayweather only has 5, so he already beat Floyd, okay? That's what he really has. They're counting his interim belts, his lineal belts, and his Ringside Magazine belts as some of those divisions, because technically he did fight in those weight divisions. So he has successfully fought in 8 weight divisions. Yes, Manny Pacquiao has fought in successful 8 weight divisions. Yes, Manny Pacquiao has successfully gotten a belt, whether it was an interim belt or a Ringside Magazine belt or a lineal belt, in 8 divisions. Yes, he has. So that's the argument. So no matter what, if they were real world titles or interim belts, he got 8 divisions. So let's just give him credit for 8 divisions. So Manny Pacquiao has 8 divisions. But the difference between Manny Pacquiao and the Naoya Inoue Japanese superstar would be that the Japanese monster would have gotten 8 real world titles in 8 divisions, or at least 6 or better, right? He has 4, okay? And the thing is that I've stressed this in other videos. In some of my other videos, I've talked about this, where that some fighters do not attach themselves to the Ringside Magazine belt, the lineal or interim belts. They will not do it. In fact, if you did not know this or did not remember this, Naoya Inoue has the Ringside Magazine belt, but he's just never really seen with it. You know, he always just puts on the belts, the 4 belts all the time. But at times he'll bring out the Ringside Magazine belt because he respects it. But he will not take an interim title. At one point in time in his career, inside the ring, they try to present him with an interim belt. And he looked at the guy and said, "Is that a real world title?" And he said, "No, it's an interim." And he didn't accept it because he wouldn't lock himself into an interim title. Okay? And a lot of fighters have done that in history because it is a smart move. It's either the real belt or nothing. You know, and sometimes there's guys that are forced, like Jerron Bruce Ennis. Man, he was waiting around so long, man. They finally said, "Yo, fight for the interim." He said, "Man, give me the opportunity. I'll take that interim belt." You know, because the interim belt was around for almost a year, vacated in front of Jerron Bruce Ennis, and he never fought for it. He didn't want to fight for an interim belt. It was basically like he had no choice, you know, to fight for one. David Benavidez doesn't want to fight for that interim belt that he has right now for the WBC. But the only way that he can try to still put an argument to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez is that he had to win it. You see? So sometimes I can see why they do it, yes, but I can see other fighters why they choose not to. You see? And the Japanese superstar, you know, look, at 5'5", Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker did it all the way up to 140, just great. After that, you know, I know what happened, right? But Tank Davis has already fought at 140 at 5'5" against Mario Barrio, and he was successful to unify an interim belt, right? At least do that at 5'5". You know, I really think that this Japanese superstar is headed in a crazy direction, you know, and I think that that's why a lot of people want to disrail him, because he has an opportunity to take a lot of people's status and records with him, you know. Let's see where this ends up. But I'm no longer viewing him as being small, where that 130 would be too big for him. Why would 130 be too big for him? Why isn't 130 too big for Tank Davis? They're exactly the same height. Why wouldn't 130 be too big for Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker? They're exactly the same height. We're just talking about a couple pounds now. And he has the skills that he can do it. Sweet Pea is in the category of an elite fighter. Those kind of fighters, when you got those skills, and then all I see by putting on more weight on this Japanese guy is giving him more power. You might slow him down a bit, but now he's even going to be a bigger puncher. You know, every punch, everybody knows that when you got more weight on you, you obviously hit harder. You know, you will hit harder. Some people's power doesn't translate like that. Some people's, you know, they can pack the weight. It's because of their technique. That's just the way they punch. If they get better technique, they probably would hit better. You know, but the Japanese superstar doesn't seem to have any problem with technique and his power. So I started thinking about this, and legitimately, I started saying to myself, wait a minute. He's exactly the same height as these guys. Why am I thinking he's too small to do this? He's right in line. He's right in line. At that height, he's not like too small. We're just talking about his body mass now at this point, and he can pack on some weight. Let's see if his frame can carry it, though. That's where the concern comes in. You know, a lot of these Asian men are not really like big, but he's Japanese, though. Oh, I retract that. Have you ever seen a Japanese sumo wrestler? Tell me they ain't big. Wait a minute. This Japanese dude might have us all fooled. He's probably been starving himself to death, and he's probably big already. His little brother looks big as hell. Didn't his little brother start his career at 126? He was bigger than Naoya, the older brother, right? So he might have been starving himself this whole time. You know, people, I'm not going to say, they say he walks around 135, 130. That's what they say he walks around. Now, yeah, anyway, but I don't believe any of that shit anyway. You know, because that's people just taking what they guess or what the fighter wants to tell you. When I used to box and they would ask me what I would walk around, I would lie all the time too. I never told the truth about what I walked around with. Never. I never did. And a lot of fighters won't tell you the truth anyway. So if some reporter was like, oh yeah, he said he walks around 135, that doesn't make it true. You know, so it could be that, time will tell. You know, I don't want to sit here and fantasize all day, but it's an interesting thing. I want to know, what do you think about it? You know, I don't view him small anymore. You know, I really started just thinking about it, and I was just like, but wait a minute. Tank Davis is 5'5" too. And he's all the way up there at 140 already. Like, it might be possible. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like the video. And like always, I'm on to the next one. Peace. I hope I answered some of your questions too.